Hello, in this session we're going to look at QTO, quantity takeoff, and some material takeoff. So as you go through and bring this into Civil 3D, some of the things to look at first would be to check that PKT for your shape names. In Civil 3D, as you're aware, the shapes equal a material or equal a quantity. So if we have not created a shape within our subassembly composer file, it will not do the quantities. You can still do quantities based on point code and other features, but if you look to a volume of, say, ballast or subbase or something, you'll need that shape. So the example we're going to use is a dual rail system that has multiple materials. Inside Civil 3D, we will create a material list. So if this is nothing that's in your standard template or a material list that's already set up for you, very quick, easy ways to read that subassembly based on the corridor shape and add that to a material list. So we'll do that. And then we can export to a report or insert as a table inside Civil 3D. Naming convention is very important. Again, in your flow chart, you have your shapes, so we want to make sure that we've created those shapes. We've got our geometry, but those shapes need to be properly named. So if we don't name those shapes, sometimes that can have some issues inside Civil 3D, make it harder for end users to create the quantities or create the surfaces that they're intended to do. So let's jump into Civil 3D and let's go ahead and do some quantity takeoff. Okay, so I'm in Civil 3D. Here's the assembly that we're going to use. And if I just quickly select that, right click, let's look at the subassembly properties. You can see here in the codes, the links, the points, and the shapes that we created in subassembly composer in our PKT file. So we'll do some quantity takeoff when it comes to the shapes and do some material takeoff here. So I'm going to hit OK here. We already have an alignment. We have a profile. We've done the corridor. We've done the sample lines. That's what we need to do the material takeoff. So if I go to the Analyze tab in Civil 3D, we have a couple options here. If I go over to the Volume and Material panel, there is Compute Materials. So I'm going to go ahead and select that, Compute Materials. It asks me to select an alignment. I can do so from a list. I can do it from the screen by selecting it from the drawing. And then a sample line group. So I'm just going to go with what we have selected here and select OK. The Compute Materials pops up here. Typically defaults to a cut and fill. So if you just want quick volumes, you can do your EG and your datum here and compare the two. What we want to do though is we want to go to Materials List. And you can see here that this Materials List may not be set up for the subassembly that we're utilizing within this corridor. So we want to create a copy or we want to edit this Materials List criteria. So here up next to Materials List, we have the drop down where we can create a new one, we can copy the current one, or we can edit this one. I'm going to go ahead and do a copy. And then I'm going to name this Materials List for Rail. So maybe inside, if you're doing a lot of rail work, maybe you want to put this inside your template, your standard template. And on the materials list, we want to add some new materials in here. So the data type, default to surface, I want to choose corridor shape. That's going to read the corridor itself, and it's going to read those shapes that we have within our subassembly that we created in Subassembly Composer. So you can see some of these. If I want volume of rail, ballast, subbase, fill, so forth, those are now available to me based on this corridor, based on that subassembly. Okay, so I'm going to remove these. And I'm going to select here on the left here, it says add new material. We could also add a sub-criteria. I'm going to go new material. I'm just going to name this ballast. Quantity type, it's going to be a structure. And now I can select here from my corridor shape, I can select ballast, add that in there. I'm also going to select subballast, add that in there. I can do another material in here, so maybe I want to calculate my subbase as well. That quantity is going to be a structure as well. I'm going to choose subbase from my list and simply hit the add sign there. So I could build this as complete as I want, but again, we have that now available to us. So I'm going to hit OK here. Now I need to map this. So I'm back here in the compute materials. I just need to map it to the correct one. So ballast, again, where naming convention is very important. Easy to see that that's going to be ballast, subballast, and subbase. Okay, from here I'm just going to select OK, and it's computed that material. Two ways to get the material in a report form. Here on the volumes and material tab on the ribbon, we can either go with a volume report or we can add a material table inside Civil 3D. Let's do both. I'm going to select material volume table. Table style, I'm going to say area and volume. We're just going to go with the defaults. Material list and what material. So I want to see my ballast here. Just going to select OK. I'm going to place this table right here. So you can see based on my sample line sections, every 100 feet in this case, I've got my area, my volume, and my total volume, my cumulative volume throughout that corridor. I can do the same thing here with a volume report. So if I want to export out a report, I can go volume report. Make sure I got the right thing selected here. The style sheet typically defaults to earthwork. You do want to select the folder and you want to select material. Hit open and hit OK. And you can see here in this exportable report, it's an XML file, but you can see kind of the same stuff we had in our table. And it gave me total ballast, subbase, whatever I had selected in there in that report. So very key within Subassembly Composer that you think long term, what are we going to use this subassembly for? If you're going to use it for volume takeoff, material takeoff, so forth, you just want to make sure that your codes, points, shapes, so forth have good naming convention, are properly done in Subassembly Composer, and the folks downstream of that will be extremely happy with some of the results.